I'm going to get straight to the point. I love the manga Record of Ragnarok. It has been one of my favorite manga to be released in recent years, and every time a new chapter drops, I immediately have to read it. So when I heard that an anime adaptation was coming out, I was ecstatic. I couldn't have been more excited to see one of my favorite pieces of work get its adaptation. So much so that it was my #1 anticipated new anime of this year for me, beating out the likes of To Your Eternity, Mushoku Tensei, and Tokyo Revengers. So finally, the anime dropped this season on Netflix. And well, I have some thoughts on it. I am Tiago with Attack on Tiago, and for today's video, I'll be going over Record of Ragnarok and why the anime failed. If you're new to the channel, or haven't already, please be sure to hit that subscribe button to be notified when I next upload a video. So for starters who don't know what Record of Ragnarok is, let me give you a quick synopsis. All the gods have gathered in one place to vote and decide on humanity's fate based on their past failures, and the majority vote was to end humanity. But one Valkyrie proposed an idea to the gods to give humanity a fighting chance. Summon the strongest fighters in history and have them face off one-on-one with the gods, and if humanity wins the most, they may live another 1,000 years. But if they lose, humanity is done for. A pretty straightforward premise, with not a lot of story or plot to it. The manga is all about the fights, and they deliver as they should. This is the tournament arc of tournament arcs, and it is very over the top, but in a way that is very enjoyable. Now let's talk about the anime. The animation studio that produced the anime has typically worked on yaoi romance genres. So why they decided to do an epic action anime, or even why they were given the rights to do an epic action anime, who knows? The anime does some things well, however. The score and OST is very good and epic. I wouldn't mind listening to it again. I also think the voice acting was pretty spot on. It's almost exactly what I had envisioned the characters sounding like when I was reading the manga. Also, there are some times when the animation does look good. I think Loki was animated fairly well, and same with Sosaki Kojiro. And in general, the faces don't look too bad. But that's where the positives I think stop. The pacing is horrendous. The Lubu vs. Thor fight felt like it dragged on when it definitely shouldn't have felt that way. During all of the fights, the times they picked to show the backstories sort of took us out of the fights itself. And because I mentioned it, let's talk about my biggest complaints. The fights. This series is built on the fights. The whole manga is fights. The premise is about the fights. This is supposed to be the one series where the fights have to be the selling point. Even if everything else fails and the fights were good, I still would have loved the series, since again, it's all about the fights. And frankly, the animation was at its worst when choreographing the fights. It felt very stale and stiff. There was no fluidity to the animation. And there was multiple times when CGI was used and they stood out like a sore thumb. Somehow they made the fights of Record of Ragnarok to be the worst part of the series. They were boring and badly done. Now let's talk about Adam vs. Zeus real quick. This fight should have broke the internet, in a good way. It is one of the most intense and epic fights I've ever read, with multiple standout moments, and in the anime, it felt like a PowerPoint slide presentation. This was a bigger disappointment to me than the Meliodas vs. Escanor fight in 7 Deadly Sins Season 3, which also should have broken the internet. Points aside, this studio never should have taken the reins for this series. This series has such a big fan base and was deserving of a lot of time and dedication into making sure it was done justice. I wasn't expecting like Ufotable or Mappa to do the animation, even though that would have been amazing, since those two studios are usually very busy. But for Record of Ragnarok to get this kind of treatment was very disappointing. If you were someone who watched the series and enjoyed it, that's great. I'm not here to judge whatever your opinion is on it. but as someone who was a big fan of the manga and was expecting much more from the anime, I can firmly say that this was a huge disappointment for me. Well, at least the manga still exists, and it is still hype. Well everyone, that is it for the video. Have you seen or read Record of Ragnarok? If you have, please let me know your thoughts on it down below. And if you enjoyed my ranting, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really means a lot. I am Tiago with Attack on Tiago, and I hope you all have a nice day.